Hey everyone, welcome back to another bonus episode of the Craft Parenting Podcast. And we are the podcast about two Cincinnati craft beer lovers with a parenting problem. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Joe Ludwig, and with me is my lovely wife and co-host, Caroline. How's it going, Caroline?
It's going good. I love this style of beer, and I would like to get all of it in my belly right now. So I'm going to do that.
So on this bonus episode, we're going to dive into a very specific style of beer.
Which, spoilers, we've all been pronouncing wrong. More later.
Yeah, that's a nice tease. We are going to talk about Hefeweizen.
Hefeweizen. No, it's Hefeweizen. I can't do it.
Well, we'll see. We have the receipts.
We do.
And we have three lovely local Hefeweizens.
Oh, snap, they are. And one of them we got on a recent adventure.
Well, all of them we got on a recent adventure.
Oh, yeah. Okay. 2 different days of recent adventures. Mama needs a nap. And I would say Mama needs a beer, but Mama's already drinking a beer. So we're good on that front.
So we're going to talk all about Hefeweizens. And, well, let's just go ahead and get started. I forget this is not the normal episode. So
we do what we want.
We do what we want. We do it how we want it. So what are we drinking, Caroline?
West Side, Best Side. We should just use the West Side, Best Side button as a transition this episode.
What are we drinking this right now, Caroline?
So we are currently drinking a Bavarian Hefeweizen from High Grain Brewing in Silverton, Ohio, which is 4.7% ABV. The description is delicate, smooth, subtle. Brewed in traditional methods, this Bavarian-style wheat beer soothes with fruity aromas, banana and clove flavors, and playfully light body that finishes smooth.
This is delicious.
It's very delicious. I'm definitely getting the banana and the clove. And for someone who doesn't like banana, you really like Hefeweizens. So, but not all Hefeweizens are very banana-y.
I don't like the texture of bananas.
They are a little weird.
And I don't like it. How they're, you can mash them and stuff. It's weird. But yeah, the flavor's okay, I guess. It's not my favorite flavor. But a lot of the traditional Germans, it's not like in your face banana.
No, it's way more clove.
Yeah. But this has a very delicate balance between the two. It's a lot, it's very banana-y for sure, but as it goes down, there's a balance to it. And I did notice, I just opened it, but there's not a lot of head going on, but it's very carbonated. It kind of tastes like sparkling.
I am getting kind of burpy. Maybe we could pretend like we're shift beers.
No, just on the back end, it has some, like you're drinking like a sparkling juice.
A little bit, yeah. I can get that. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
It's good.
It is. I am looking forward to crushing more of these.
So we picked this one up at Jungle Jim's when we went as a family the other day.
Yeah, that was a crazy day. But lots of fun. And I still have so much food. We bought a lot of things. And by we, I mean I threw a lot of things into the cart.
All right, so let's dive into some facts about Hefeweizens.
So I figured we could start off with what the difference is between all of the styles that people think are Hefeweizens but are not Hefeweizens. So we can narrow down what specifically we're talking about.
Yeah, that's good. Let's do that.
So this is from Allagash Brewing Company. They wrote a whole blog post on this a little over 3 years ago. So the Allagash Brewing Company has a blog titled "What is Wheat Beer versus Wit Beer versus Hefeweizen?" So all of the 3 beers mentioned are considered wheat beers, which means wheat makes up a good portion of their grain bill. Most beers use barley because barley gets you more sugar, gets you more things that are easier to deal with. Wheat is a little bit harder to work with. So an American wheat beer is simply just called a wheat beer. And they use American yeasts that don't create the heavy clove and banana character that you're used to in a German wheat beer. So they'll be a little more crisp. And then they can get a lot more clear than Hefeweizens typically are, because typical Hefeweizens are pretty cloudy. And they usually have a little bit more of a hop character to them, which makes them a little more crisp than you're used to having in a Hefeweizen. Because Hefeweizens aren't really crisp. They feel really good on a hot day, but it's not like a crisp drink. It's a little more smooth.
Yeah, because it's a lager, right?
Yeah.
So.
It's a top fermenting yeast. So that means it's an ale.
The Hefeweizen is?
Yes.
Oh. I did not know that. But it is brewed via to standard with the Reinheitsgebot.
It does fall under the Reinheitsgebot.
So that also makes a difference because a lot of the American beers do not. Maybe that's the difference.
Sorry, maybe repeat that.
The difference in taste might be because the Germans adhere to the Reinheitsgebot.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure that's a big...
And they're very strict about the ingredients, where the Americans don't necessarily have to worry about that.
Yeah, Americans care, but they're not.
Oh, they definitely care.
German level of strictness. You must only use these 4 ingredients and no more. Unless if it is the magic rock that you have been throwing in your beer for the last 500 years.
Magic spoon.
No, magic rock.
Oh, it's a rock.
Yeah. No, sometimes it is a rock. But like, because a spoon, you're always using a spoon. Spoon, that falls under the Reinheitsgebot. But throwing a rock into your fermenter does not fall under the Reinheitsgebot unless you've been doing it for the last 500 years, in which case, yes, we'll give you an exception. I swear this is a thing, but I do not have details at the moment. Just roll with it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Am I going to have to Google this now? Let me say rocks, beer.
Oh my God.
3 days later.
A Steinbier. A Steinbier is a stone beer, an ale brewed with the use of hot stones, originally without the use of any brewing equipment made from metal. That sounds really German, but that is what came up on my rocks German beer Google search.
Just learning all kinds of things tonight, folks.
It's in southern Austria and some parts of Bavaria, up until the beginning of the 20th century.
They used rocks to brew beer.
Yeah, because they didn't have proper brewing vessels, so they heated everything up by heating up a bunch of hot stones and then dropping those into the beer.
I'm so confused. How does that make beer?
Because
it
heats up the water. It heats up your wort. Because if they don't have a giant metal pot that they can put over a fire to heat stuff up, if all they have are wooden casks or wooden containers, you have to heat it from the inside out. You can't heat it from the outside in. So they just heat up stones in a fire. You put charcoal on a fire, instead you put stones on the fire and then chuck the stones into your beer.
Okay. I'm kind of getting it, I guess. I don't see how you can, like in Robin Hood, the movie, like you see them cooking.
Yeah, but back in Robin Hood's time, that would be a very expensive piece of cooking equipment. Not everybody can afford that. So, and even one, like if you want one that's large enough to brew your own beer, it's going to be really expensive.
I see.
So
how much beer did they brew at a time?
I don't know. But it also would, since the rocks would be so hot, it would immediately start boiling the water that it touched. And the sugars from the wort could also instantly caramelize. And the stone would release some of the smokiness from the fire. I mean, it was very dangerous. Quote, not surprisingly, this procedure was highly dangerous and could easily end up with a brewer burned by wort or the brewery consumed by fire. Because you're dealing with all wooden equipment and lots of fire.
Yikes. So let's get back to Hefeweizen.
I'll put this in the doc just so you have it for reference, since we did in fact talk about it.
Okay, so using rocks to brew beer. So let's go back to the Hefeweizen.
Yeah. So American wheat beer, not what we're talking about. Wit beer is also a thing we are not talking about today, which were brewed as early as the 14th century in Belgium. And the word literally translates to white beer, just because of all of the wheat that they were putting into it. And just that means that there's a decent portion of wheat making up the grain bill. And typically, these are actually brewed with coriander, citrus, or other spices. So not necessarily anything Reinheitsgebot-able. And they're a little more clear.
Yeah,
Maybe,
so like a spiced wit beer, it's pretty common. It's a pretty common style.
Yeah, but not Reinheitsgebot, which a Hefeweizen is.
Right. So that would be a distinction between the American version, which is more hoppy and more crisp.
Mm-hmm. And the wit beer is going to be a little more spicy.
Yeah.
Which leads to your Hefeweizen.
A Blue Moon would be a wit beer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is German for white beer. So similar but different. Because Hefeweizen itself translates to yeast wheat in German. The grain bill is typically more than 50% wheat. These other ones don't necessarily give percentages. It just has a good portion of the grain bill. So it could be less than 50%, but like 40%. And they're usually characterized by a strong presence of banana, clove, or vanilla or bubblegum, which is weird when you're drinking a beer and you're like, this is like bubblegum. How is that a thing?
Yeah, so that's a characteristic of the yeast. And I'm going to put on my home brewer hat, which is very rusty at this point.
A little bit.
We haven't brewed or home brew in over a year. Maybe we'll do that soon. But I believe you can get a kit at like Listerman or what have you, whatever your local homebrew shop has.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have, Listerman for sure has very close to quote Hefeweizen. You can either store the beer warmer, so like 75 degrees. Is this right? Help me out here.
Oh, yeah. So based on the temperature that you ferment at, you can affect the flavor of your beer. So if you want it more clovey, you go one direction. If you want it more banana-y, you go another direction. I'm not going to say which way is which because I will for sure get it wrong.
Right. So one is warmer. So like you store it at after you brew everything and you're ready to let it ferment.
You go to like 74 degrees or whatever, like getting really close to the top limit of your yeast.
And if you want it another way, you store it cooler.
Yeah, at the colder limits of your yeast.
So maybe like 60, 65. So that's kind of interesting. You use the same yeast, but depending on how you store it and the temperature that you use, it might affect the taste. Or it will affect the taste, rather.
Oh, for sure.
So let's crack open another beer.
I'm down for that because we just finished this high grain beer.
All right. So is this yours?
That's yours. This is mine that I haven't used yet. This is mine that I have used.
Okay. That was an awful pour.
I'm going to have to take away your Oktoberfest volunteer card.
By the way, we have not tried any of these beers.
We have not. So this is like super fun. Wait, did I get... No, I did not get the Hefeweizen when we went to Alexandria. I tried to get like weird beers when I went for a flight.
All right. So as you alluded to, this is Das Henker, which apparently means the executioner. And it is excuse me. This one is called Star Das Heckner, the executioner. And it is a Bavarian style Hefeweizen. It is by Alexandria Brewing Company in Alexandria, Kentucky. ABV is 5%. And the star, and this is right on the can.
It is. I will verify as I'm looking at the can.
And it says, not grammatically correct. We don't care. Very punk rock of you, Alexandria.
A little bit. And I like how on their can they say, brewed in Cincinnati tradition, proudly made in Kentucky. Because Cincinnati is a thing.
I would say, yeah, it's on the outskirts of since Kentucky.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty pretty south.
Yeah, and the not grammatically correct comes from like the das, der, die. You actually took German. I did not.
The pronoun.
Yeah, whatever the pronoun is in the beginning of it to make it the.
And the description is our Bavarian-style Hefeweizen brewed using decoction. It is an easy drinker that will take your palate to the Bavarian countryside.
Okay, we got to get in our German garb, technically our Bavarian garb, and go hang out in the backyard now.
I'm down for that. This has a, what do you call that, bubblegum? Clove?
I'm getting a little more of the bubble gum, maybe.
It has a different aftertaste, like as it goes down.
It very much tastes different. Like it's a little more clean.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be really down for this on a very hot day. This would be slightly more refreshing after I watch you mow the lawn than the high grain beer. But I would drink this and then I drink the high grain. I don't know where the third one falls into this on the hot day after I watch you mow the lawn, but I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Do we know what decoction is?
So decoction is a German brewing method
Mm-hmm.
that is unnecessary according to some brewers and very necessary according to others.
Right. I know that it was a very heavy topic of discussion in the archives, the deep archives, like the original episode, a few episodes of Cincy Brewcast.
Yes, because there are some brewers in Cincinnati that do it and swear by it, and others that say, no, it's a waste of time. Why would we bother doing that? So I'll just read the first paragraph from beerandbrewing.com's dictionary for decoction. So decoction mashing is a traditional and intensive method of mashing. While the method was once used by most breweries, today decoction is a controversial topic among brewers. Many German brewers, among others, claim that it develops malt character, depth, and superior foam. Others feel that it is a waste of energy and time and is unnecessary now that modern, well-modified malts are available to everyone. So basically, you're going to remove part of the mash, boil it, and return it to the main mash, which is held at a constant temperature, which there are two different reasons why you boil one part of the mash, which is to use physical pulping, which impacts the cell wall of the mash. I guess by heating it up way more so, you're kind of breaking down the mash a little bit more. And then to raise the temperature of the bulk mash to a defined higher temperature after mixing both parts. Because before you had thermometers, it made things a little bit more repeatable.
This is very in the weeds.
This is not as in the weeds as Stein beer was, though. Because they actually talk about decoction on this beer. Yeah. But Stein beer, I was like, hey, this is a thing that they do. And you're like, what?
Stein beer.
That was the rock beer.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh my, we are getting into science on this one.
Well, beer is science.
Beer is very much science.
Yeah, as I think we have a mug that says that from Braxton Labs.
Probably. So I'm just going to attempt to read this and completely butcher it with like almost zero context, because that's what I'm getting when I'm skimming this article. The combined mash temperature after the third mash boiling is 167 degrees Fahrenheit. For the saccharification rest, I don't even know what saccharification means or if that's how you pronounce it. I don't even know if Marco can help us because he couldn't help us with that other thing that we didn't know. I will be adding this webpage to the end of the document as well.
Yeah, so Alexandria Brewing, Das Heckner, Henker. It's definitely nothing. It's not what I would think that a Hefeweizen would taste like, but I don't hate it.
Yeah, this like isn't what I would necessarily expect if I ordered a Hefeweizen at Oktoberfest, but I am also here for it. I don't know why. Like I can't describe it.
I think it's that bubblegum-ish. I can't place it. I think it's bubblegum.
I think for me it's just a little too crisp. Like I like the crisp, but it's just a little too crisp.
It is.
I want it to sit on my tongue a little bit longer. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
I don't have a problem with that. It's just that aftertaste that is different to me. And different is not bad.
It's just
That's not what I expected for sure.
Yeah.
It's crazy how we have 3 different quote Hefeweizens, but they all, I'm assuming Saunders will taste different too.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much room to go in each style that it makes sense. And so I found out where my resource was on what kind of yeast this is, and it was wikipedia.org, which is a site that only talks about beer. I don't remember why they came up with the name Wikipedia. I think something to do with the brewing process.
Okay.
But it works. So they say that it's a top fermenting yeast. And historically, it was brewed with a large share of wheat malt, which was a privilege in Bavaria, or from air-dried pale barley malt, which was common amongst, quote, poor people. And throughout Germany, it's just better known as a Weizen outside of Bavaria. So it's well known in Germany, though it's better known as just a Weizen outside of Bavaria.
Yeah. So you go to a bar and you say Pils, Weizen, Dunkel.
Yeah, those are your options, which I am also here for. And then, so Hefeweizen is the traditional wheat beer, but there's also a Crystal Weizen or Crystal Wheat
Oh, I've never
or
heard,
a Crystal Weiss beer. I've heard of a Crystal Weizen. I swear I have. Which refers to it after it's been filtered to remove the yeast and wheat proteins. Because it's cloudy. I didn't even get into this yet. It's cloudy because the yeast is in suspension. So like lots of New England IPAs rely heavily on wheat to get that cloudy appearance
What is
with
that
their yeast
beer?
in suspension.
It's a Munich beer. It has a monk on it. I know I'm not, but you have to pour it.
Oh, the beer that we always get.
I have to look it up.
3 days later.
Francis Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Francis Connor Weiss beer. The one that we drink in the basement of our church. Well, our old church.
Yes. I feel like that's an unfiltered.
Well, I mean, most of your German Hefeweizens are going to be unfiltered. And all of the beers that we're currently drinking are in cans. Part of it is just because Germany is still mostly doing bottles for their packaging. But also with Hefeweizens, typically what we do when we serve a German Hefeweizen out of a bottle is you crack open the bottle, you do a mildly aggressive pour for half of the bottle, and then you stop. You swirl the bottle a little bit.
So you get the yeast.
So you get all that yeast that's settled to the bottom.
Yeah.
And then you just violently flip it over and pour the rest of your beer into your glass, which is not the way that you pour any other beer in existence. But that is how you get a deep foamy head.
And you have to do it in a tall 22 ounce
Yes,
Pilsner.
it is a very tall glass.
The traditional 22 ounce Pilsner.
That's kind of shaped like a lady.
Sure. That's how you'd pour it though.
Yes.
And it, man, I wish I would have thought to get that when we went to Jungle Gyms.
It's okay. This quote from craftbeer.com is, "This wheat beer is at its best when poured into a Weizen vase, a large, curvaceous glass, which showcases the beer's beautiful glow and corrals its large, persistent foam cap, given the style's characteristic effervescence." Because this beer is a lot about the smell and the head retention.
Right.
And I mean, you're going to have the problem, like, because bottles don't necessarily travel as well as cans or kegs do. It probably isn't as good in the bottle, but it's still pretty gosh darn good. So I can only imagine it's like 20 times better if you're actually drinking it in a German beer garden.
I mean, draft beer in Germany is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to break everybody, or do we want to open this beer first?
Let's open up our last beer.
Okay. So our last beer is just called Hefeweizen from Sonder Brewing Company in Mason, Ohio, and is 5.4% ABV.
That was not a good pour.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to take away your pretend bartending license.
I can make out a lot of banana already. Oh, yeah. Very banana-y. I just had a sip.
Oh, I'm down for that. This one's got the best head so far.
Oh, man, that's good.
I'm picking up what they're putting down.
All right, so this is Sonder. And you already read the description.
There wasn't a description? Let's see here. According to Untapped, a traditional Bavarian wheat beer with hints of clove, honey, and light banana, finishing with a dash of light spice.
Oh, I put it in the wrong spot on the document.
Oh, that was why I kept wanting to say that something was from Allagash Brewing. That makes way more sense now. It's a classic German-style wheat beer. We're paying homage to the history of this style. So I'm hoping that means they follow the Reinheitsgebot.
Maybe. I don't know if there's like a certification process that you need to go through or what. I know Christian Moerlein did for Hudepol.
Yes, and they were the first brewery in the States to follow the Reinheitsgebot. At least
to follow or to get certified.
Yeah, officially.
I don't know how it works,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you have to get certified.
I would assume so as well.
Just like in any of your engineering, like project management. What is it?
I'm certified in project management.
No, I was going to say...
Six Sigma.
Six Sigma.
Lean manufacturing.
Like all that stuff.
Yeah.
What's that thing that you did every year?
ISO.
Yes, ISO.
So much fun. I love that so much. I'm glad I don't do that anymore.
What?
So, talking a little bit more about Hefeweizens, the style is particularly noted because it does not have a lot of hop bitterness. It has 15 IBUs typically, or somewhere that's like super low. But IBUs mean nothing, which I had to explain to your father for like the 30th time the other weekend. Because we were trying to pick out a beer for him, and I was like, this beer, you're going to like this beer. And he's like, but it has 24 IBUs, and I don't like hops. And I'm like, that number doesn't mean anything. You're going to like this beer.
That's when we went to
BJ's Brewhouse.
Yes.
Yeah. And surprise, surprise, he liked the beer. And and Hefeweizens have relatively high carbonation, which makes sense because they usually have a really good head. In order to get that really good head, you need high carbonation. And I'm burping like crazy over here.
This is has pretty good head retention. The others did not necessarily. But like I said before, the high grain, it didn't taste flat. None of these tasted flat.
No.
I mean, the Bavarian Hefeweizen from high grain in particular, it had that like aftertaste where kind of like you're drinking like sparkling grape juice or something.
Mm-hmm.
It had that like sparkly flavor at the back.
Yeah.
This is good.
It is. I'm a big fan of it.
Like I said, very heavy on the banana. Do you get that as well?
Maybe not as much as you do, but I also enjoy bananas, so.
It's kind of sweet.
It is, because Hefeweizens are typically pretty sweet and malty. Even though there's lots of wheat in them, they have a malt sweetness to them.
But at the same time, it's kind of dry, too.
Yes, and part of that is because of its different phenolic characters. The signature one can result in clove or medicinal or smoky notes.
I don't get smoky.
I got a little bit of smoky after I read smoky, but part of that is like if you're eating something, somebody's like, oh, this tastes like orange, and you are not getting any of that until somebody said it. Like if you have have a headache and I'm like, well, does your arm hurt? Does your stomach hurt? Does your leg hurt? And all of a sudden all of those things hurt because I asked you about them, even though they actually don't. How's your leg feeling right now? I'm just putting stuff in your head because I'm being silly.
Get out of here. Is there anything else you would like to discuss about the style of Hefeweizen?
Yes, there are other versions of Hefeweizens.
Oh, okay. Do tell.
So there's also a Dunkelweizen, which is a dark wheat. A Weizen Stark beer, which is a strong wheat beer, also known as a Weizenbock, which you can usually get around Bock season. And they use more kilned malts for those flavors. And then per usual with Bocks, Weizenbocks typically have a higher alcohol content because that's how they roll.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to break everybody now and tell them that they've been pronouncing Hefeweizen wrong?
All right, let's do it.
So I typed Hefeweizen into Google Translate, so Google Translate could tell me how to pronounce Hefeweizen correctly. And this is what Google Translate came up with.
Hefeweizen.
Because according to Google Translate, Hefeweizen is Chinese and means and share how. So again, that is
Hefeweizen.
You've all been pronouncing it wrong.
Wow. My mind is blown. Thank you, Google overlords, for settling this debate once and for all.
Here it is according to Google Translate in German,
Hefeweizen.
which is closer to how the gnome pronounces it, and I am not a fan.
I'm just gonna cut that part out. I'm not gonna give him that.
I wonder, because but see, here's the thing, because we say Hefeweizen, and everybody at the Donnerschwaben says Hefeweizen. If you're asking them, they'll say it's a Hefe.
A Hefe, yeah.
Yeah, they'll be like, hey, give me the Hefe. Or Hefeweizen. I don't really think anybody ever calls it a Weizen. It's always Hefe.
Yeah.
But just like English, there are a lot of different dialects of German. So it could be that our dialect of German is slightly different than the one that's in Google Translate. Because I feel like at some point I was told, Schwäbisch, which is more the version of German that we're used to using, is more like hillbilly German. Because if you think about it, someone in Boston says car. I would go to my car. Versus we say car.
Washer.
Yeah, and there's washer and washer. And somebody in Kentucky is going to say, I go to my truck.
How many more stereotypes can you get in?
How many people can I offend in the next 2 minutes?
No, I mean, that's actually...
There is no S in Kroger's. It's just Kroger. You go to Kroger. You go to Meijer. You don't go to Kroger's. I say Kroger's all the time.
I do too. It's lightning bugs and water fountain.
It's
and
pop because it goes pop when you open it, not soda.
Unless you're in Atlanta.
And then everything is Coke because they've just all been brainwashed. Literally, we heard somebody say, I'll take a Coke. Do you have Sprite?
That's how they ordered their drink. Yep.
I think Mark even said that somebody will say oh, I'll take a Coke, I'll do an iced tea. I'm this makes 0 sense. I'm so confused.
No, but Germany is a country, has a long history, and borders change, and it's just crazy. Europe is a crazy place.
Europe is a melting pot, but they don't accept that they are in fact a melting pot.
Well, I mean, the borders change, but the people stay. So in the case of my grandparents, they may have been born in one country, or maybe that's not a good example, but I guess their parents were born in one country.
And then borders got redrawn after World War I.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're in this country that didn't exist 2 years ago.
But the town a mile over is in a different country all of a sudden.
I didn't need a passport to go there before. Now I got to have all these papers.
You don't need passports. Passports are a modern thing.
I was making it relatable for the peoples in the phone.
But just think about it. After World War I, the borders changed. A bunch of bureaucrats were like, we're going to draw a line.
So it's if all of a sudden now we live in Indiana because somebody decided to redraw the borders. And, oh, hey,
But we live in Indiana, but Julia, who lives a couple blocks over from us, she lives in Ohio.
Yeah.
They're just overnight, like that. That's what happens in Europe. That's what happened in Europe, constantly over the last 2 centuries.
Yeah, I remember in my European history class in my freshman year of high school, just every 3 weeks, we would get a new map of Europe and color in the countries that we were going to talk about. And then it's okay, let's compare this week's map to the map 2 weeks ago and see all of the countries that don't exist anymore and all of the new ones that popped up because people who don't know anything about the people in these regions decided we were going to redraw borders.
Right. So I guess my point is, in Germany, there's High German. That's the standard.
Which is probably what this chick's saying on Google Translate.
Right. That's what I learned in college when I took German. And that's what is taught in school over there. I mean, for the most part, that. And then there's the different dialects, and you have Swiss, the Swiss side,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the Belgian side, and you have the Bavarian side, and there might be some more dialects in there too. And the Bavarian side is where my family comes from, and that's called Schwäbisch.
Yes.
And that's like it's like, different. They have we have different words for different things. It's like, like it's like slang. Slang German is a way to put it, I guess. It's hard to explain because it's not the same as English.
Well, it's like the stuff that we said before, where it's like, I'm going to pronounce this slightly different than you were, or like, you're going to call it a firefly, you're going to call it a lightning bug, and I'm going to call it a firefly. But those two things mean the same thing.
Right. It's similar, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
So.
Hefeweizen all damn day.
Yeah.
Or Hefe.
Yeah.
Or give me that delicious wheat beer.
Pronounce that however you want. I think the Germans do it best.
Hefeweizen.
Except that way. Don't pronounce it that way.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get in any more trouble?
I don't think so, but I just like how I was like, yeah, people used to chuck hot stones into kettles, and you're like, the fuck? And I'm like, hey, look, Google Translate German rock spear thing.
Google search, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I've totally killed your algorithm, by the way. Are we going to call the drunk line after this?
I'll have to figure out how to do that at a technical level. I think we need another beer for that. So that does it for this week's show. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on the social medias. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Craft Parenting Podcast. We have a website, www.craftparentingpodcast.com. We have an email address.
You manage it. How did you forget what it was?
Because I'm reading out of order.
Okay. Our email is craftparentingpodcast@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. Make sure to share the show. It is what helps our show grow. If you'd like to send us stuff such as fan mail, craft supplies, or sanity, which is really beer disguised so the Postal Service doesn't take it away, we have a P.O. box.
And that information is on our website, which is www.craftparentingpodcast.com.
That's where we post the show notes. Plus, we've been writing blog posts about some of the stuff that doesn't make it into the podcast.
And if you want to follow me personally on the Instagram, I post pictures of the beers that I drink. You can follow me at Craft Parenting Joe.
And if you want to follow craft projects that I do when I remember to post them, I am at Caroline Creates Crafts on Instagram or Caroline's Creative Crafts on Facebook.
And with that, I'm Joe.
And I'm Caroline.
See you next time on the Craft Parenting Podcast.
Oh, geez. Lily's about to turn 3? What? I mean, I know this because I'm signing her up for preschool. But this blog was from 3 years ago. And Lily's almost 3. And it's the same year that Lily was born. And my baby's not a baby anymore. And I'm now going through an existential crisis that I will push those feelings down and continue the podcast.
3 days later.
Well, that's going in the blooper reel.
All right, let's troll.
Call.
Oh boy.
Welcome to the Ship Beers Drunk Line. Drunk Line! Leave a message if you're drunk. If you're not, hang up, Marco.
How you doing?